lies ahead if we don't ride. Sometimes the road gets rough, and what lies ahead we don't know. So take your lady by the hand and lead her down the road to the land of good luck, and ride the wind if you can forever. Keep it at your back till you die. Ride the wind, if you don't, you will never know what lies ahead if we don't try. So throw your kids and your dog in your old pickup truck, head 'em down the road to the land of good luck, and ride the wind if you can forever. Keep it at your back till you die. Ride the wind, if you don't, you will never know what lies ahead if we don't try.
In 1996, I drove an industrial delivery truck throughout southern Alberta, and one spring day I was driving southeast of Milk River on a gravel road, and as I was driving I noticed out of the corner of my eye something moving, and so I slowed down and I saw that there was a litter of coyote pups in the field, and I was very fascinated, so I stopped the truck and pulled over and got out and started to watch the pups. And at first the pups didn't notice me, they just kept on playing and wrestling and stuff, but I decided to get a closer look, so I started to slowly approach them, and one of them noticed me and paused to watch me, and soon enough all the pups stopped their playing and saw that I was watching them, and they watched me, but you know, it wasn't long till they were bored of me and got back to playing. But I wasn't satisfied, I wanted to get even closer. So I carefully crept towards them, and of course the closer I got, the less fascinated they were, and they started to get nervous and then cautious, and soon enough their fascination turned to fear, and when I got close enough they scurried down their hole. Even then I wasn't satisfied, so I walked right up to their hole and peered right down into their hole, and when I did that I saw a pair of eyes looking back at me, and as soon as he saw me, he darted away. As I drove away, I felt a vague sense of guilt for disrespecting the space and the home of the coyotes. I peered right down their hole. Later that week, I met an old blood Indian in the park in Lethbridge, and we got talking, and he told me that when he was a little kid, he actually spent his summers living in a teepee, and he even, you know, would hunt rabbits and stuff like that with a bow and arrow. And now he lives obviously in a house and drives a pickup truck, wears a cowboy hat and Wrangler jeans. He also told me that when he was about 20 he went to fight for Canada in World War II. presumably for freedom and prosperity. And when he got home, he didn't get any honors or any credit or any thanks. They just sent him back to the reserve where he didn't have the right to vote. He couldn't even leave the reserve without a permit. And he said, you know, I fought for freedom and prosperity, and now most of my family lives in poverty and despair and bondage to alcohol. A couple of weeks later, I went to go see my coyote pups again. I was on the same road making a delivery, but the coyotes were gone. The farmer had filled in the hole. And you know, I guess he had the right to protect his land and his crops and his machinery, but it still made me feel a little sad and in fact a little guilty. I didn't fill in the hole, but I do eat bread and I do eat meat. I had been studying a poem at school which really seemed to glue the experience that I had with the coyotes and meeting the old Indian, seemed to glue those experiences together in my mind. The name of the poem is Snake by D.H. Lawrence. A snake came to my water trough on a hot, hot day, and I in pajamas for the heat to drink there. In the deep, strange, scented shade of the great dark carob tree, I came down the steps with my pitcher, and must wait, must stand and wait, for there he was at the trough before me. Someone was before me at my water trough, and I, like a second comer, waiting. The voice of my education said to me, he must be killed, for in Sicily the black, black snakes are innocent, the gold are venomous. And voices in me said, if you were a man, you would take a stick and break him now and finish him off. But must I confess how I liked him? How glad I was he had come like a guest in quiet to drink at my water trough and depart peaceful, pacified, and thankless into the burning bowels of this earth. Was it cowardice that I dared not kill him? Was it perversity that I longed to talk to him? Was it humility to feel so honored? I felt so honored. And yet, I looked around, I put down my pitcher, I picked up a clumsy log and threw it at the water trough with a clatter. I think it did not hit him, but suddenly that part of him that was behind convulsed in undignified haste, writhed like lightning and was gone into the black hole, the earth-lipped fissure in the wall front, at which, in the intense still noon, I stared with fascination. And immediately I regretted it. I thought, how paltry, how vulgar, what a mean act. I despised myself and the voices of my accursed human education. And I thought of the albatross. And I wished he would come back, my snake, for he seemed to me again like a king in exile, uncrowned in the underworld, now due to be crowned again. And so I missed my chance with one of the lords of life, and I have something to expiate, a pettiness. I think that the attitude of the white people in southern Alberta is generally pretty good. While there are cases of blatant racism, most of us try to be open and try to be kind to the natives we encounter, and we try to understand the situation, and sometimes we do, and sometimes we have no clue. Part of the reason I decided to make this film is to increase my understanding of the situation. Many of the interviews in this film are preceded by comments we heard while talking to the residents of Cardston, the town that borders the Blood Reserve.
The relationship with the Indians has been, as far as I'm concerned, good. But the Indians are bastards at the art of milking the white man.
You know, they've got some of the best land around the country out there. And if they could get someone who could manage that, that's the richest reserve around. And it's just something wrong with the management or something there. I worked for a fellow just out of town here. He leased a bunch of land on the reserve. I was running cultivating for him and help put the crops in and harvesting on that land, and it really produces. And those guys have made millions out there working on that land. You know, they lease it and take off a good crop and they make a lot of money. But there's something, why can't they do it themselves, you know? You'd think they could manage that?
They attempted to get the Indians to farm.
He did?
Never paid off.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How come?
They're not addicted to it.
I decided to go to the blood tribe itself to find out more about them, about their history, their culture, and their way of life. I wanted to know how we had filled in their hole. I talked to Rick Tailfeathers, the director of the Blood Tribe Public Relations Department.
We believe that we were created here in North America. The migration from Mongolia and all this, most of our people don't buy that, because in our legends we were created here. We were known as the Bloods by the government, and all this time our real name is Ganai, which means many chiefs. So in all the documents and history, we still go by the name Bloods, but you know, that's it's not true. It's Ganai, and that's what we've always been known as. We had suffered several epidemics which had wiped out most of our people. By 1877, we were only a third of our original population. And there was some stories that some of the Indian agents deliberately infected our blankets. When the treaty was made, the chief of the Bloods was Chief Red Crow, who had already been down east a couple of years earlier, and he had seen the overwhelming population of European people that lived in the east, and he saw there was no way that we could change that. So that, coupled with the disease that took a lot of our people, plus the buffalo, they were being slaughtered on the plains. The last herds were going south. So we had no choice. We had to make the treaty with Canada, and pretty much on their terms. And yet we look around on the outside of the reserve, and you see farmers and ranchers with huge tracts of land, some of them the size of our reserve. In those days, they were so hungry, some of them had to raid ranchers and farmers outside the reserve in order to survive. And some of them were imprisoned for life for doing that. It's almost like we became prisoners in our own land. Our identity, we didn't know who we were. We had lost our lifestyle. The Christian churches had forced us to lose our language and our spiritual ways, and we couldn't fit in. You know, you can't just fit into a society where you don't really belong. And that took a really toll on our socioeconomic life to the present, where today this reserve is suffering from poverty, from addictions to gambling, to drugs, to alcohol. The Indian agent had to write us a permit to be able to leave the reserve, to go to Lethbridge. You know, how could we possibly think about doing business if you can't leave the reserve? And, you know, if we were caught off the reserve, then we were imprisoned, you know, and if we weren't in the schools, the residential schools, the parents were charged for not bringing their kids to the school. So we had no control over our lives. Here on the reserve, because of the economic conditions, we can't even farm our own land.
Why not?
We can't go to the bank and get a loan like any farmer could. We estimate that at least about 48 to 50 million dollars leaves the reserve through agriculture, and that's farmers coming onto the reserve, farming our land, cutting forage, you know, all that. 50 million leaves the reserve, and then they turn around and they pay back 7 million for rent. Right now, if whatever oil or gas they drill on the reserve, the revenue that comes from oil and gas goes directly to Ottawa. It doesn't come directly from the oil companies to us. It has to go through the government, then the government reallocates monies to us, and we have to request them the money every time we want money. We have to ask them, and we have to have a reason why we want that money.
If our religion was, if you lived your religion, they're our neighbors and they're brothers and sisters, and they should be treated as such. Until that happens, there's not going to be any really big advancement in the relationship in Carson as far as I'm concerned.
Well, we do have neighbors we don't like, I'll put it that way, that have been native, but this family is really nice.
Well, it's not that we don't like them, they
It's
just
their-
don't, they just not go by the rules.
Yeah. Respect your
You know, on
neighbors.
your own, you do as the Romans do, or you're in bad trouble.
We also talked with Jasper Buckskin, a tribal elder.
Oh, kaya kipita kaya kung kinawa kispo.